How many of you have ever visited SeaWorld? Okay. So, how many of you have seen one of their orcas? Okay, so then you know about the tricks that the orcas can perform, going out of the water or carrying their trainer around or playing with the ball. Well, I used to love visiting SeaWorld and going to these shows, and actually when I was in 5th grade, my aunt took me and we swam with the sea lions and my uncle swam with a beluga whale. So I used to be all about, ooh, let's go see the animals. You know, how every kid is like, oh, mommy, take me to the zoo or take me to the petting zoo. And so I loved this stuff until I found out what happens behind the scenes at SeaWorld. So I'm going to tell you what has happened in the past at SeaWorld, what has been done to help fix these problems, and I'm going to present you with it. And we're going to discuss the benefits of the solution. So on June 15th, 2018, SeaWorld Hertz published an article called What Really Happened to Shamu. And this talks about the original Shamu who was captured in 1965 by whalers at the age of 3. And the whalers killed Shamu's mom and shipped Shamu off to the SeaWorld in San Diego. There, the SeaWorld trainers starved Shamu and refused to let him eat until and forced him to learn tricks. In 1971, they had a publicity stunt and had their press secretary, Annette Eckes, ride on the back of Shamu. A few minutes into the ride, Shamu turned around and attacked Annette, grabbing her leg in its mouth and chomping down. And when they finally opened his mouth, she required almost 100 stitches to stitch her leg back up. She sued SeaWorld and they retired Shamu from shows. Now later that year, Shamu died from a uterine infection and blood poisoning. Now, if he had been left in the wild and never captured, he could have lived to be 100 years old. Instead, he died at the age of 9. As humans, how can we be so inhumane to these animals? So, according to another article called The Life Full of Loss, published by the Whale Sanctuary Project, written by Christine Colvin, there is another whale named Tillicum, or Tilly for short, and this is Tilly, all happy, and this is his trainer, Don Branchow. So in my analysis of you guys, I found out that many of y'all have heard the story of Tilly, and so on February 24th, Tilly and Don were performing a show, and they were laying on the mat, as you can see right here, and they were laying down together when Tilly turned around and grabbed her ponytail and dragged her throughout the pool. She died of blunt force trauma, and her skull had been ripped from her head, her scalp had been ripped from her head, and many of her bones had been fractured or broken or dislocated. So following this, California refused to let SeaWorld build any more tanks for their orcas, which was a step in the right direction, and SeaWorld agreed to stop breeding orcas in captivity. But what about the orcas that are still in captivity today? What is being done to help them? Now, I understand that many people believe that we need to leave the orcas in captivity because it's unsafe to release them to the wild. But leaving them in these metal tanks is the same as letting them sit in prison. So we need to help free these whales. So in 2013, the movie Blackfish was released, and SeaWorld suffered greatly. Their stocks plummeted, their visitors decreased, and several high-ranking employees left. Now, after this, SeaWorld's claim that they need to keep the whales is to protect them, as I have said, and they claim that sea sanctuaries just are imprisoning them. They don't realize that they're already imprisoned. So, in an article published by Mother Jones called SeaWorld Says It Has to Keep Orcas to Save Them, published in December of 2014, it talks about how SeaWorld has only published 7 articles since 2010 talking about the research that they have conducted by orcas. But several of these papers aren't even mostly about orcas. They're about other animals that live in Australia and New Zealand. So as humans, we cannot let SeaWorld continue to do this. So I propose that we need to force SeaWorld to send their whales to sea sanctuaries. And the Whale Sanctuary Project is working on building several sanctuaries around North America that SeaWorld can send them to. Now, as you may think that sea sanctuaries are just sending them back into the wild, it's not. So when they get sent to a sea sanctuary, there's a boundary, as you can see here, and that stops the whales from being able to go back into the wild. And there's scientists and volunteers that watch these animals, and they can live freely out in their natural environment. So in review, we have learned that orcas can become more dangerous in captivity. I presented you with a solution to release them to a sea sanctuary, and we've discussed why this is a good option. So now it is your turn. I challenge you, before you leave here today, to talk to at least one person about orca captivity and help spread the word to help release these